There's the short-term aspects of what's going on in the world right now, and then there's the long-term, more secular trends that might or might not have been accelerated by what we're currently seeing in the market and in the world, where we're seeing definitely more lights-out operations in data centers. Frankly, just because people aren't allowed to come into data centers as frequently or as great a number as they have been typically. That really has an impact on things like manageability, your ability to recover from operational issues or maintenance issues. A couple of the longer term things that we're seeing though is definitely an increase in data movement to the edge. It's driven by the fact that there are a lot more devices now on the edge than there have been in the past. Those devices are gathering and analyzing a lot more data than they have been in the past, and the network infrastructure to backhaul that stuff all back to a centralized data center doesn't exist quite yet. A lot of that's going to change with 5G, but the other side of the coin there is with network infrastructure enhancements, you also get the opportunity to push rich analysis and data out closer to your customers. We're seeing a lot of organizations reconsidering the notion of packing all their people into one centralized building for the operational efficiency of that. We're seeing more distributed workforces, and those distributed workforces still expect the applications they use on a day-to-day basis to run as quickly or as well as they did back when they were at the major corp site. And so that means moving data, moving applications and interfaces closer to where those users are. I don't think data centers are going anywhere, but instead of having these massive data centers, what you'll have is micro POPs, points of presence, that correspond to the interconnects where your data uplink happens to be, so that you can allow applications to be built that have that local point of presence all the way down to the region or zip code or even smaller level. And those places may not be built the way traditional data centers have. Anybody that's been into a data center knows that the power, the cooling, the space, the whole design has been built from the ground up for a certain level of efficiency and certain operating characteristics of that hardware. Well, if you're having to build out to an edge where, let's say it's a bank branch, well, those buildings haven't been designed for that kind of spec. It requires a different kind of approach to building appliances that are comfortable running in that kind of environment. It's a place where SoftIron happens to shine because we build appliances that are task specific, which allows us to build the power and heat and space profiles in a way that's optimized for that particular task. And those optimizations happen to align really well to putting them in places where traditional data centers aren't necessarily spec'd. The fact that data centers have fewer people allowed into them at one time means that you can't necessarily get to a system as soon as it fails to replace a failed drive, to make configuration changes. And that means that the systems that are going into data centers, they need to be more resilient to failure. They need to be able to self-heal. They need to be able to self-manage for some period of time so that it can basically account for that gap in period of service. And that's a space where SoftIron, because of our unique approach to building appliances and because of our strategic decision to align with Ceph, which is designed from the ground up to be highly resilient and self-recovering, that's where we have a particularly distinctive advantage. Most of the players out there that build commercially viable open source models are software only companies, and so it ends up being a disconnected experience for customers who may want to buy and consume open source in the same single throat to choke appliance model that you might buy a closed source proprietary vendor's product. And that's what SoftIron at its core is doing. We're basically converging those two experiences to make the entire use of the product over its life cycle as seamless and simple to use as possible.